The woman had checked into the wrong hotel room and, by mistake, lost her first time to a stranger. Months later, she showed up at his door visibly pregnant. But instead of taking responsibility, the man pulled out a short knife right in front of her. Pressing the cold blade against her belly, he sneered, "A woman's insides must be much more delicate than a man's." Tears streamed down her face in fear. Yet a mother's instinct forced her to clutch the blade tightly. Choking back sobs, she begged him to spare the child. He slammed her down, his voice icy. "Spare the child? I'm not that merciful." Just as the knife was about to plunge down, she jolted out of the horrifying vision, because she suddenly heard someone speaking to the man. The elderly matriarch urged him to marry Miss Liu as soon as possible. Both family children must be born with the family name and rightful status. Though the man clearly had no desire for it, both the old lady and the old master threatened him with their own lives. The butler delivering the message even took out a phone, saying the matriarch had instructed that once the young master saw what was on it, he'd agree to the marriage. At that moment, the surroundings grew unnervingly silent, so quiet the woman could hear her own heartbeat. Being blind, she feared the man might do something extreme. She squeezed her eyes shut in panic, and when she opened them again, she was startled to realize she could vaguely make out the man staring down at the phone. Suddenly, he snapped his gaze toward her. His hand shot out, gripping her arm. Then he was informed that the matriarch had already chosen an auspicious date. The wedding would take place in just 2.5 days, with her personally overseeing it. The man agreed without hesitation, tilting Miss Liu's chin up and telling her to rest well, so she wouldn't collapse on their wedding night. This man, speaking with such brazen arrogance, was Bo Wang, the infamous living Yama. And the woman was Liu Jilin, a once wealthy heiress who had been left blind after her family's bankruptcy. 5 years ago, after the Liu family went bankrupt, she was taken in by the family butler. But the butler's son and daughter-in-law often beat her without mercy. One day, while they were busy in their room, she quietly slipped away. The noise alerted them and they rushed out to search. Knowing a blind woman couldn't have gone far, they shouted honeyed threats as they chased her. "You're carrying the Bo family's child. Don't you dare fall into a ditch. Be good. Come out and we promise we'll never hit you again." But Liu Jilin had heard such lies far too many times. She curled into a corner, covering her mouth to silence even her breathing. She knew if they found her, it would be the same beating as always. This might be her last chance to escape, but she was blind and had no idea where freedom lay. Then came the sound of approaching footsteps. Determined not to be dragged back, she pushed herself up and fled blindly into the unknown. Yet she was still discovered, though thankfully not by those two. Instead, the man who found her immediately demanded to know whose child she was carrying, and his voice sounded disturbingly familiar. Her mind supplied the answer in an instant. He was the one who had taken her first time. She struggled with all her strength, but in the end he forced her into his car, leading to the scene at the very beginning. What she didn't know then was that this infamous man would one day hold her hand like she was a princess and lead her toward a path of salvation. And Bo Wang never imagined that he would fall completely in love with a bankrupt, blind heiress. On their wedding day, he was still out carousing, infuriating the Bo family's matriarch so much that she ordered people to drag her unfilial grandson back. Everyone present was family, so word wouldn't spread, but for the groom to be absent was humiliating for the bride. At that moment, Yu Yunfei spoke up in Bo Wang's defense, saying, "The Liu family fell years ago. She's nothing but the daughter of a ruined household. Pretty, yes, but marrying into the Bo family is already the luck of her life." After the ceremony, Liu Jilin overheard the maid say that the young master wouldn't be coming home that night. To others, it meant a lonely bridal chamber, but to her it was actually a relief. She gazed around the unfamiliar room, a wave of mixed emotions washing over her. 5 years of blindness, and now that her sight had returned, she still had to pretend she couldn't see. Lying on the bed, she looked at the birthday gift from her father, feeling like a child who had done something wrong. Just 3 days ago at the sanatorium, she had struck a deal to buy that gift back from a child. In doing so, she signed 2 agreements. One was a prenuptial property contract. The other, a clause stating the marriage would last only until the child was past the breastfeeding stage. For the sake of an item in a child's hands, anyone else would have thought she'd lost her mind. But she alone knew the truth. That bronze piece was handcrafted by Master Yu Qing. and her father had paid an astronomical price for it back then. Later, the Liu family fell, her loved ones were gone, and everything they owned was taken away. She swore she would reclaim everything that once belonged to the Liu family. Yet on their wedding night, the bride wept alone in the bridal chamber, while her groom enjoyed himself in a world of wine and neon lights. When he heard that his wife had signed an agreement just to get a toy, a flicker of displeasure crossed his face. Just then, a woman sidled up to him with a coy smile. "What do you want to play?" Hoping to hook herself a rich husband, she purred, "Anything you like." "Then let's play whack-a-mole." With that, he gave her a sudden shove, sending her splashing into the pool. Before she could even ask what he meant, stacks of cash began raining down into the water. Just as the woman reached for the cash, a whip cracked down beside her. Her dream of catching a rich husband shattered. Bo Xiao now called her the rat, announcing that whoever grabbed the whip and struck the rat could claim all the money in the pool. The more they hit her, the more they could take. She froze in shock as the crowd gleefully lashed at her. No wonder he was called the living llama. He really knew how to play his games. At that moment, his subordinate Li Minghui walked over with interrogation records, reporting that the two suspects had been thoroughly questioned. Lu Jilin, both before and after that night, had never been with any other man, meaning the child in her belly had to be his. Hearing this, a flicker of satisfaction crossed his face. This way of claiming someone was very much like him. But then the subordinate asked, all too eagerly, if he should avenge their sister-in-law. His gaze turned icy. Sister-in-law? That look was enough to make the man's knees buckle, but he hurried to correct himself, stammering, "I just meant, Lu Jilin. She really does seem innocent." Innocent? If the stakes are high enough, no one stays innocent. He cast a cold glance ahead. There was a perfect example right in front of him. In this hypocritical world, everyone's a devil. That woman was either a fool or hiding her true nature very well, and he would be the one to rip off her mask. His voice carried a dangerous edge as he spoke, just as his wife, asleep beside him, slipped into a nightmare. Her lips trembled, whispering, "No, please don't." In her dream, she had returned to the past, her grandfather holding her in his arms, chuckling that after 6 noisy boys in the Liu family, they had finally welcomed their little princess. As the cherished jewel of the family, whenever she was bullied, all 6 brothers would stand up for her. Her grandfather had even entrusted her with the power to decide who would lead the Liu family, and all her brothers willingly yielded that right to her. Back then, she was truly surrounded by endless love and protection. But then a sudden fire devoured everything, and the only thing left in her ears was a desperate cry, "Shao Qi, live on." The dream ended abruptly as she woke with a start. The next morning, she carried on with her usual act of being blind. With a maid supporting her, she made her way to the dining hall for breakfast. Along the way, she overheard a few maids cleaning in the corridor gossiping. They even married a blind woman into the family, and she spent her wedding night alone. The young master clearly doesn't care about her. Should we go greet her? 88. Greet her, my foot. Give it a few days and there'll probably be a new young madam. Hearing this, the maid supporting Lu Jilin shot them a sharp glance. Then she gently reassured the young madam not to take their words to heart. This maid was clearly a kind soul, soft-spoken and genuinely caring. With her steady support and casual introductions along the way, Lu Jilin began to grow more familiar with the Bo family's mansion. Just as they reached the dining hall, a basketball came hurtling toward her. Everyone assumed she was still blind, but she instinctively stepped aside, narrowly avoiding the ball. She then feigned confusion. What happened? The maid broke into a cold sweat, relieved the young madam was unharmed. Just then, a bratty kid appeared, calling out, blind woman, without the slightest courtesy. Turned out, this rude little boy was the Bo family's young master. Looked like he'd grow up to be another little reaper like Bo Wang. Even at his age, he was already tripping people on purpose. He even whispered for the maid to keep her mouth shut. Then, with a cruel grin, he spat, "You disgusting woman, using your pregnancy to force my brother to marry you." Months later, she showed up at his door, visibly pregnant. The boy smirked, certain he was about to get his way. But Lu Jilin abruptly stomped down hard on his foot. As his cries of pain rang out, she innocently asked, "What happened?" Just then, Bo Wang's uncle's secretary Xia Meichin came rushing over, snapping, "Why did you step on my son?" Lu Jilin feigned innocence. I'm sorry, I can't see. Is there a child here? Where is he? As she spoke, she accidentally stepped down again. Another pig-like scream tore through the air, sending Xia Meiqin scrambling to scoop up her son and run for a doctor. This might offend Madame Xia, but Lu Jilin wasn't worried. The maid had told her Bo Wang's standing in the family was far higher. Since she had married him, she might as well use that to her advantage. Though Xia Meiqin looked fierce, she wasn't calculating. The real one to watch was the woman before her, Yu Yunfei. At 43, Yu Yunfei was a former top star, and the very person who had suggested to the matriarch yesterday that a maid could stand in for the groom at the ceremony. Moments ago, she had invited Lu Jilin to join her for breakfast. As they sat together, Yu Yunfei sized up the new bride, freshly arrived and already tripped up and challenged by elders, yet still eating so casually. Was this man really marrying a block of wood? Just then, her personal maid brought news. The young master would be flying back into the country tonight, and he had already booked a hotel room complete with the room number. Hearing this, Lu Jilin's eyes lit up. She decided to make a big move that night and immediately ordered the maid to book a suite at the same hotel. Ever since Xia Meiqin had given birth to her son, her standing in the Bo family had been slipping, and tonight would be her chance to shine again. At that moment, Xia Meiqin, fresh from sending her son to the hospital, stormed into the room. You injured my precious boy and still have the appetite to eat. I'll break your legs today. But the blind woman nimbly sidestepped her attack. In doing so, she bumped into the maid who was booking the hotel, sending the phone clattering to the floor. One glance and Xia Meiqin knew something was off. Why are you booking a hotel? To go to a concert. The excuse was obvious. She spun on her heel, thinking no one is stealing my man. The maid panicked, insisting that the young madam had suddenly bumped into her, making her drop the phone. I didn't mean to, Lu Jilin said, her eyes shimmering with pitiful tears, so convincing that even the ex-star Yu Yunfei didn't realize she was acting. Jilin, don't be afraid. That fierce woman's gone. I've got things to do, but let's keep in touch, Yu Yunfei said. As she left, she glanced at the blind woman out of the corner of her eye, a strange feeling lingering in her mind. The maid finally let out a breath. Her young madam had narrowly avoided trouble. Yes, quite lucky, Lu Jilin replied casually, though inwardly she was already planning to deal with those who had wronged her. Soon, with the maid's support, she arrived at the hospital. By chance, she overheard a doctor reminding someone, Mr. Bo Wang, you really should ease up when using the whip. Sorry, I'm nagging. Let me just get you bandaged now. Bo Wang. Could it be him? Her vision was still blurry and a hint of panic stirred inside her. No, Jiangbei City was huge. Surely there was more than one man named Bo Wang. When they reached room 303, the maid stepped forward to open the door. But Lu Jilin got there first, pushing it open herself. The maid froze for 0.01 seconds, because in that instant her young madam didn't look blind at all. As she stepped into the hospital room, she spotted a middle-aged man, and the two people who had once beaten her daily. The man was Feng Zhen, once a loyal servant of the Lu family, who had taken her in after the family's downfall. The moment he saw her, he dropped to his knees. I've failed the master, the madam, and you, my lady. The maid looked puzzled that it wasn't a holiday, so why such a formal bow? Lu Jilin released the maid's arm and walked straight to the bedside, fixing her gaze on the frail man lying there. He was Feng Zhen's son, Feng Chao. Seeing her approach, he shifted uneasily. What's wrong? Surprised to see me alive and well? From the side, a woman scoffed weakly. Blind witch, how are you not dead yet? So I could stand here like this, face to face, to take my revenge, she replied coolly, adding that she was now the Bo family's eldest grandson's wife. Both of them stared at her in shock. Surprised. You have only yourselves to thank for it. With that, she swung her cane hard, smashing it down on the woman's plastered foot. A pig-like scream echoed through the entire ward. At last, the woman confessed. The entire scheme had been Feng Chao's idea, that he had drugged her that night to make money by forcing her into a man's bed. Betrayed by his own girlfriend, Feng Chao didn't even have time to curse before he began begging for her forgiveness. A second later, her cane cracked hard against his mouth. Don't rush. Both of you had a hand in this, she sneered. The two of them froze in terror, and soon the room was filled with a chorus of pig-like screams. The maid stood stunned, her young madam with the face of an angel, clearly had the heart of a devil. After dealing with the two who had tormented her for years, Lu Jilin didn't vent her anger on the butler. In fact, she still respected him deeply. 5 years ago, if not for Uncle Feng taking her in, she would have died. That he had gone to work in another city to give her a better life, only for his son to cut off all contact. "Miss, don't worry, I'll make this right for you," he vowed. "Make it right. I know you too well that you'd kill them, and then take your own life. Sending the guilty to prison is enough. Feng Chao isn't worth you sacrificing the rest of your life. That if you really feel you owe me, then repay it another way." With that, she revealed her plan, to restore the Lu family's glory. "Will you help me?" "Help you? But I'm such a sinner." Suddenly, Feng Zhen's expression shifted. He saw light in her eyes. Her vision, it had returned. He was just about to speak when the maid, in a panic, bumped into a chair. Both of them turned their gaze toward her. The maid trembled, already afraid she'd be silenced for what she'd overheard. The young madam curved her lips into a sly smile. "Well, since you've heard." She stepped forward slowly, her tone teasing. "Then I'll just have to," but before she could finish, the maid's legs gave out and she collapsed in a faint. Lu Jilin muttered helplessly, "Do I really seem that scary? Why does everyone keep passing out?" Back at the Beau residence, she was demonstrating her tea brewing technique. The maid was beside her taking notes, flustered when asked about her progress. Young madam. Call me Lu Jilin." The maid wiped a bead of sweat from her brow before reluctantly reporting her learning progress. It turned out that after waking up in the hospital, the maid had been roped into Lu Jilin's plan to restore the Lu family. The first step was reclaiming all the Lu family's old possessions. Faced with the angel-faced devil, the maid had no choice but to climb aboard this pirate ship to save her own skin. While discussing how to recover the heirlooms, Lu Jilin heard a strange rumor about the Beau family from the maid. It was said that when the young master was 5, he lost his memory in a car accident and was then sold to a butcher's household that treated him worse than an animal. By day he was fed rotten vegetables, forced to do heavy labor and beaten. By night he was thrown into a dog cage to sleep. That's child abuse. Exactly. Luckily, years later, a fire consumed the butcher's home, killing him, and the young master escaped. His bloodthirsty nature now may be rooted in that past. The topic ended there, but Lu Jilin suddenly said, "My husband hasn't been home for a week. Dies his wife. I should send him something to show I care." With that, she drove to Jiangbei City's most exclusive enclave of the wealthy, stepping out of the car with a mask covering her face. But she wasn't there to see her husband. She was there to use the circle to make money. As soon as they walked in, the maid heard someone call out, "Xiao Fuxing." Turning around, she saw it was the playboy second young master of the Ji family. They exchanged a few polite greetings. His gaze then shifted to the masked beauty beside her. Unaware she was Bo Wang's wife, he immediately tried to invite her out for a drink. Lu Jilin didn't even bother to acknowledge him. The maid quickly stepped in, explaining that she was the matriarch's favorite tea brewer. That alone was enough to make the young master uneasy. In the end, the invitation for drinks turned into an offer to have tea. Once seated, the chatter around them revolved entirely around Bo Wang's recent whack-a-mole game. Soon, the fragrance of freshly brewed tea wafted through the room, drawing everyone's attention. One sip of tea and young Master Ji instantly sobered up. He chuckled, "Want me to gift you some?" "No, wait, if you need flowers you can buy them from Boss Feng Zhen." Seeing the tea business going well, Lu Jilin suddenly felt nature's call and decided to head to the restroom. She had just stepped out the door, long legs carrying her away, when she caught sight of a strikingly handsome man through the crack in the doorway sipping wine. It was clearly her husband, missing from home for 5 days, yet she mistook him for one of the club's gigolos with that build and face. She figured he had to be the star of the night. Just then the man turned his head. She quickly ducked aside, relieved she hadn't been caught staring. Looking at the voting flowers in her hand, she decided then and there to cast her vote for him, so he'd win the title of the club's top gigolo for the night. An hour later, Bo Wang returned to his room, only to find 2 flowers hanging on the door. Someone had mistaken him for a gigolo. Who put these here? Find out. Soon, every young master present was dragged into the mess. Come on, one by one. Who did it? Faced with his domineering questioning, the group of wealthy heirs stood frozen, trembling in fear. Fortunately, there was surveillance footage of the incident. But when they checked the video, the culprits turned out to be his own maid and the matriarch's favorite tea brewer. Bo Wang never imagined that the vaguely familiar woman in the footage was actually the wife he had married not long ago. I'd like to see which little vixen dares to mock me. He crushed the flowers in his hand into a tight ball. Then he rose to his feet and led a team of bodyguards straight home. Meanwhile, Jiang Fuxing was helping Lu Jilin back to her room. He suddenly received a message from Ji Jing, and when he opened it, his face turned pale. Young Master Bo had gone on a rampage at the Black Spade Club today. Apparently, the young master had visited the club and some fool had mistaken him for a gigolo, even going so far as to stick 2 voting flowers on his door. Bo Wang had exploded on the spot. Hearing this, a memory flashed through Lu Jilin's mind and she instantly realized. The person who had mistaken her husband for a gigolo was none other than herself. The only time she'd faced Bo Wang directly before, her eyesight hadn't yet recovered. She never expected that one mix-up could cause such trouble. Her body stiffened slightly. Is that bad? She asked. Jiang Fuxing shot back instantly. Of course it is. He explained that the young master had once been forced into working as a gigolo. Several thugs had thrown him into a rich woman's private room. Later, those thugs were carried out on stretchers and the blood in that room took 2.5 days to clean. Lu Jilin got the message loud and clear. Then guess where our 2 flowers are now? She said lightly. Jiang Fuxing froze, then blurted, You're the one with the guts of a madwoman. He quickly advised her to run for her life. But Lu Jilin just popped a grape into her mouth to calm her nerves. Then she reached for more fruit, continuing to calm her nerves in her own way. After eating her fill, Lu Jilin calmed down a little and asked, So Bo Wang is ruthless to everyone, no exceptions? Jiang Fuxing replied without hesitation, For the woman he loves, there's bias and exceptions. But you... He didn't finish the sentence, but Lu Jilin understood well enough. They might be husband and wife, but there was no real affection between them. Still, she quickly came up with a plan, 2 women performing one act together. Moments later, Bo Wang stormed through the front door. When the butler asked if he wanted anything for supper, he ignored him completely and walked straight past. The butler froze. Was the young master heading back to the bridal suite? Bo Wang didn't pause until he reached the 3rd floor, the corner of his lips curling into a smirk laced with both menace and anticipation. Plenty of people come looking for a beating, but not many come looking for death, he thought. Tonight might be entertaining. But just as he reached the bridal room, voices drifted out through the half-open door. Young madam, I'm sorry. You asked me to bring the tea brewer from the tea house to serve the young master, but I couldn't do it. Lu Jilin's warm voice replied, He wasn't there, so it's not your fault. Then Jiang Fuxing asked curiously, But I don't understand, young madam. Why insist on delivering it under the family's name? Because he misunderstands me, my concern would only make him uncomfortable, Lu Jilin said softly. I just wanted him to have some tea to sober up. Young madam, everyone in the house says you're clinging to power, but I think you might actually like the young master, Jiang Fuxing said. Outside the door, Bo Wang leaned against the wall, his eyes full of mockery. Like me? Huh? What a joke. Inside, Lu Jilin's voice continued. Back when I was still in elementary school, I saw a painting online that completely captivated me. I thought it was incredible and pestered my parents to let me become the artist's student. That's when they told me it was painted by the Bo family's eldest son. When I found out he was also just a child at the time, I kept pestering them. At this, Bo Wang frowned slightly and turned his head. Inside, Jiang Fuxing asked as if on her behalf, Pestered them for what? I pestered them. Lu Jilin paused for 2.5 seconds, then laughed. I pestered them to let me marry him. Bo Wang's thoughts darkened. Is this woman insane? Not looking at my face, not my family background. Just a painting. How boring. He suddenly pushed the door open and stepped inside. Jiang Fuxing froze, both shocked and nervous, staring at the tall man in the doorway. Why, young master? Bo Wang's deep magnetic voice rang out. Get out. Then he slowly tilted Lu Jilin's chin upward. I want to have a private talk with my admirer. Picking up a knife, he aimed it at her eye, and to his surprise, she didn't flinch at all. Bo Wang's smile froze instantly. Confirming she really was blind also ruled out the suspicion that his wife had mistaken her husband for a gigolo. But that wasn't enough for him. He gripped her jaw firmly. His fingers traced across her lips. Then, cupping the back of her neck, he pulled her in and kissed her. Lu Jilin was stunned. She didn't know if this was a test, but at this point, retreat wasn't an option. As Bo Wang's kiss grew more forceful, she suddenly lifted her hand, seizing the initiative. She kissed him back with greedy hunger, her lips and tongue claiming his. Startled, Bo Wang immediately pushed her away. "Do you really like me that much? Of course that if you don't believe me, I could say it over and over." Before she could finish, Bo Wang cut her off. "What if I told you to die for me?" Lu Jilin froze, thinking she must have misheard him. But when Bo Wang received no answer, he gave a mocking laugh and turned to walk out. She remained rooted to the spot, her whole body tense with caution. It wasn't until Jiang Fuxing entered, closing the door behind him and reporting that Bo Wang had gone to the study, that she finally unclenched her hands, blood now covering the small blade she'd been gripping. "What are you doing?" Jiang Fuxing was stunned. She had used sharp, searing pain to train herself not to instinctively dodge a knife aimed at her. She had deliberately left the knife in plain sight, so Bo Wang would be tempted to use it to test her. But Jiang Fuxing still couldn't understand why she'd go this far. Until she explained, Bo Wang had rushed home because he'd recognized her figure on the surveillance footage. "If he proved I was faking blindness, he'd think I put those 2 flowers on his door just to insult him, but I don't want to follow his script. So I told him I liked him to divert his attention. That way, even if he finds out the truth, I can frame it as, because I like him." After hearing her explanation, Jiang Fuxing was left in absolute awe. He couldn't help gossiping. Turns out that whole liking Bo Wang since childhood bit was something Lu Jilin had made up on the spot. After he left, she recalled Bo Wang's behavior earlier, kissing her one moment, telling her to die the next, and couldn't help wondering what kind of man he really was. Meanwhile, the butler was respectfully relaying the matriarch's orders to Bo Wang. "Stay home tonight and have breakfast with the young madam in the morning." Bo Wang voiced his displeasure, clearly unmoved by the matriarch's so-called life or death demands. But when he simply told the butler to leave, the man walked away happily. He knew the young master had agreed to stay the night. However, when Bo Wang entered the bedroom, he saw Lu Jilin sitting on the sofa, stirring a bowl of bird's nest soup, one hand wrapped in bandages. He immediately guessed she'd hurt herself while cutting fruit. "Do you have no coordination? How do you even manage to injure yourself like that?" Lu Jilin gave a faint smile. "I had Fuxing make you some bird's nest soup. Will you drink it?" "How did you know I'd be staying here tonight?" "I didn't." Hearing that, Bo Wang instantly assumed she was hopelessly in love with him. Bo Wang then stripped off his shirt without the slightest concern for her presence. Caught off guard, Lu Jilin took in every detail of his chiseled body. Good lord, who could resist that? Her gaze flicked to the room. Only one bed. Looked like they'd be sleeping together tonight. The thought made her instinctively clamp the bowl under one arm. Fresh out of the shower, Bo Wang mistook the gesture for her deliberately keeping it warm for him. "Put away your little schemes, you'll get nothing from me." With that, he lay down on her bed. "Do you usually sleep on the outside or the inside?" she asked. Bo Wang froze mid-movement. "You want to share a bed with me?" "Can I?" she asked cautiously. "Of course. If you don't mind waking up with your guts spilled all over the sheets." Taking the hint, Lu Jilin immediately grabbed her pillow and moved to the sofa. Sharing a room with such a dangerous man, she found herself unable to sleep even past midnight. Hugging her pillow, she rolled over in frustration, noticing Bo Wang wasn't even covered with a blanket. If he caught a cold, she'd end up suffering for it too. So, after confirming he was asleep, she picked up the blanket to drape over him. But suddenly his eyes snapped open. He reached out as if to grab her by the throat, but she pretended not to see and calmly continued with her task. Then she quietly groped her way back to the sofa. The moment had been terrifying, worse than seeing a ghost. She resolved to keep her nose out of his business from now on. But there was no escaping. Bo Wang suddenly told her to come and count for him. "Wouldn't taking a sleeping pill make it easier to fall asleep?" she muttered. "No, I want you to count. But you can't get on the bed, sit on the floor. Start." "Who even does that? Making a blind woman sit on the floor to count sheep?" Lu Jilin was speechless, but she had no choice. So she began, 1 sheep, 2 sheep, counting on and on. But she had barely reached 2 before he cut her off. This man was a nightmare to serve. Lu Jilin instantly recalled that Bo Wang had a trauma related to sheep. so she wisely switched to counting plain numbers instead. Yet when she reached 250, he suddenly flared up again, lifting her chin. What is it you're after? If you confess now, you still have a way to live. If I find out on my own, I'll make you regret being alive. I truly want nothing, only for you to be happy. So you won't cry until you see the coffin. Do you want me to let you experience what acid feels like on your face? But even that threat had no effect. She only spoke with heartfelt sincerity about the agreement she had signed, promising to leave willingly when the time came. Hearing this, Bo Wang slipped back into a lazy demeanor, ordering her to keep counting. Lu Jilin reached up and rubbed her chin. Bo Wang assumed she was savoring the moment, smugly thinking she was infatuated with him. Little did he know she was silently cursing, savoring. My chin just hurts from your grip, you narcissist. She could only keep those thoughts to herself and continued counting in a gentle tone. By the end, she had no idea what number she'd reached. She simply drifted off to sleep, leaning against the bed. For once, Bo Wang showed a rare flicker of mercy. He didn't wake her, just sat there watching quietly. When she woke the next morning, she found him staring at her. She didn't know how long he'd been watching, but she knew that if this kept up, she'd eventually crack under the pressure. Yet even after seeing her wake, Bo Wang said nothing, just kept his eyes locked on hers. Luckily, a knock came at the door, followed by Jiang Fuxing's voice from outside. Seizing the chance, she put on her act again, pretending not to realize he was awake. Come on, dear, breakfast is ready. Later, at the dining table, the past she had wanted to keep quiet was brought up by the matriarch herself. The Bo family's channels were indeed well informed. After her family's bankruptcy, she had been taken in by the butler. But when the butler went away for work, his son not only beat her daily but also drugged her and sent her to a man's bed, that man being Bo Wang. At the time she too had been drugged. The matriarch didn't want the matter to blow up and had destroyed all the evidence. Lu Jilin fought the urge to flip the table and simply said, I understand, Grandma. And what exactly do you understand? Bo Wang's tone dripped with disdain, but the matriarch's aim was to keep the Bo family from acquiring another scandal. Hearing his words, the old lady's temper flared. What she did wasn't just for Bo Wang, but so that their future child wouldn't grow up to be mocked. Only then did Lu Jilin realize the matriarch intended for the child in her belly to inherit the family estate. The old master suddenly chimed in. Exactly. If people found out the first time was because of being drugged, they might think he's incapable. Lu Jilin instantly caught his meaning and couldn't hold back a few coughs. Bo Wang felt his pride crumble and growled each word. I'm capable. The old master nodded in satisfaction. My eldest grandson went to the battlefield for the first time and came back with a life on his hands. Bo Wang's face darkened instantly and he silently began undoing his cuffs. Seeing this, the matriarch quickly had the servants escort the old master away. She then smiled to smooth things over, promising to help Bo Wang get what he deserved. But Bo Wang let out a low, mocking laugh. Then help me get what I really want. The matriarch asked, and what do you want? I want to die. Care to lend a hand? The matriarch froze on the spot at Bo Wang's words. Without another word, Bo Wang turned and walked out. From the flicker of guilt on the old lady's face, Lu Jilin realized the Bo family was far more complicated than she'd thought. Suddenly, the matriarch seized her hand like a drowning person clutching a lifeline, begging her to make sure the baby was born safely. But she had no right to refuse anyway. Only if the Lu family rose again could she and her child avoid being controlled. A short while later, at a tea house in the suburbs, she gave Feng Shu, the man managing it, 2 instructions. First, to push the business harder. Second, to find a way to collaborate with entertainment venues frequented by the elite. Suddenly, a startled voice came from behind, making Lu Jilin pause for a moment. She quickly recognized the well-dressed woman dripping in designer labels, Gong Zihua, the Gong family's pampered heiress. The woman wasted no time in sneering. Who would have thought? The once proud 7th miss of the Lu family, reduced to running such a low-class little business. Oh right, how could I forget? After the Lu family fell, most of them ended up dead. Lu Jilin's gaze turned cold. This woman clearly came with bad intentions. She replied evenly, sure, but tell me, which family in history hasn't lost someone? Gong Zihua choked on the words, unable to fire back immediately. Then she noticed the vacant look in Lu Jilin's eyes and realized she was blind. Her tone turned even sharper. How did you end up like this? Back in school, even the tiniest scratch on you would send the whole board of directors rushing over to check on the campus princess. But as soon as she said it, something didn't add up. Fallen phoenixes were supposed to be worse off than barnyard hens, yet this blind woman somehow owned a tea house. Could it be she was being kept by some much older man? One old enough to be her father. The thought nearly made her laugh out loud. Determined to let more people in on this joke, Gong Zihua extended an invitation right there. This weekend, bring your husband to my family's angel charity gala. Don't worry if you can't donate. Just think of it as an old classmates get-together. Lu Jilin eventually agreed, giving her that bit of face and even had the waiter send her a few tins of tea. Gong Zihua accepted the tea with polite words, but inside she was smug. Who would have thought the former heiress would one day be buttering her up? Lu Jilin said calmly, since we were classmates, it's only right to gift you a few tins. But you know my situation now. If I gave them for free, you'd surely refuse. So I'll just charge you the cost price. 300,000 yuan. Is that enough? For this measly tea, 300,000, that's daylight robbery. Lu Jilin sighed softly. This is premium tea, the kind only the wealthy can afford. If you don't trust me, then let's just forget about the charity event. Oh, that's not necessary. Swipe the card. Gong Zihua thought, fine, 30 grand just to enjoy the show. After paying, she walked out with the tea gift bag. But the further she went, the more it stung. 300,000. Sensing the trap, Uncle Feng advised, Miss, you can't go. That gala is just a setup to humiliate you in public. But Lu Jilin had a reason she couldn't refuse. The invitation listed several treasures for auction. Among them, a rare Chinon Agarwood Buddhist bead bracelet. It had been a gift from her grandmother to her grandfather. When the Lu family went bankrupt, her grandfather couldn't bear to part with it, but her grandmother pulled it off his wrist to pay the debt, saying, as long as the family is together, nothing else matters. Yet just days into those hard times, a fire took them all away. Clutching the invitation, Lu Jilin knew that now the bracelet was within reach. She had to try. Who's Lu Jilin? The former heiress of the most prestigious family. Zihua invited her just to make her a laughingstock. What no one at the gala knew was that the woman they were waiting to mock was actually Bo Wang's newlywed wife. Some even suggested that Bo Wang join them for the fun. All eyes turned as Lu Jilin slowly made her way into the hall. She lifted a hand, tucking her long hair gently behind her ear. Pretty face, shame she's blind. Ji Jing muttered, then froze, sensing for some reason that Bo Wang looked ready to hit someone. Jilin, why are you so late? The green tea girl stepped forward, feigning warmth. Then she deliberately raised her voice. Sit inside with your husband. Instantly, gossip about the Lu family's heiress marrying an older man ignited across the room. The butler clenched his teeth in anger and quickly clarified that he was only a servant. Gong Zihua ignored the butler's words entirely, and Lu Jilin couldn't care less. Even when placed in a quiet, isolated corner, she remained perfectly composed. Don't worry, classmates will come find you, Zihua thought smugly, eager to watch her make a fool of herself. Sure enough, two girls with mocking tones approached, sneering that she was still pretending, having her husband pose as a servant no less. Lu Jilin found it childish and didn't even bother replying. That only emboldened them, still acting like a spoiled heiress. The Lu family's gone and you think you're still Miss Lu? Uncle Feng's anger boiled over and he was about to step in. But Lu Jilin stopped him with a lift of her hand. Calmly, she spoke a few simple sentences. Her words were enough to make the two girls' faces flush with frustration as they turned away in irritation. One of the girls yanked the donation box closer and called out, Since you're here, why not donate 80 or 100,000? Speaking as if it were an obligation, she froze when Lu Jilin pulled out only 500 in cash. Just 500. Who are you trying to fool? No cash. You can scan the QR code. Lu Jilin replied calmly, charity is about sincerity, not the amount. Look at you, so cheap yet still trying to sound righteous. How laughable. Her words left the living room in an awkward silence. Hearing every word, Lu Jilin simply told Uncle Feng, it's fine. Someone else scoffed. Who would have thought? The former heiress of the #1 family in K-Nation, donating only 500 and still having the nerve to sit here. Has it been so long since you've eaten at a proper banquet? Or are you just trying to cozy up to a few rich folks? Right, Brother Wang? But Bo Wang didn't answer. His gaze remained fixed on his wife's slender figure. Under his breath he murmured, "Spineless, letting people insult you without fighting back." Ji Jing kept chattering on, ready to throw in a few more jabs, but seeing an elderly man in his 50s present, she decided to hold back. Bo Wang, however, suddenly turned his gaze toward her. Startled by the unexpected stare, Ji Jing grew uneasy. "What is it?" she asked. Bo Wang replied casually, "Nothing," but the uneasy feeling lingered. The next moment Bo Wang clapped her on the shoulder, hard. "Your head and neck are connected pretty solidly. Looks good." Ji Jing's knees buckled and she slid to the floor, stammering, "Why so tense? I was just complimenting your long neck." But she didn't believe her own words for a second, still unable to figure out what she'd said to offend this man. Luckily, the voice from the stage announcing, "The auction is now beginning," broke the tension. Instantly, every gaze shifted toward the exquisite item about to be auctioned. Just then, the father of one of Lu Jiling's middle school classmates came over, greeting her warmly. At first his words were polite, but it didn't take long for his tone to shift. He implied that she had gotten involved with a man older than himself for money, and feeling bold, he offered to pay for a hotel trip to fix her eyes. Catching the sleazy undertone instantly, Lu Jiling calmly stated that she was already married. But the man persisted, sneering, "You're barely in your 20s. How could an old man like that satisfy you?" He leaned closer, adding, "How about this? Uncle will buy you a few designer handbags," and even reached out to grab her hand. Feng Shu could no longer hold back and shoved him away. Instead of backing off, the man scoffed, "You're just a tea shop owner. Keep meddling and I'll show you what real money can do." Lu Jiling calmed Feng Shu, then deliberately raised her voice. "If Uncle Wang wants to chase young girls, he should at least make sure they're willing. My mother never had any interest in stealing someone else's husband." The remark instantly stirred whispers across the hall. Clearly, Mr. Wang's intentions were far from innocent. Hearing this, Wang Jiqing, his pride wounded, shouted, "Lu Jiling, you're shameless. Do you still think you're some rich young lady?" Lu Jiling replied coolly, "Uncle Wang, there's no need to get so worked up. Even if you want to buy something, the seller still has to agree." But Wang raised his voice even louder, slandering, "Your father burned down your house because he couldn't stand your mother cheating on him." The accusation struck directly at her deepest wound. Without hesitation, she grabbed the nearest tableware and hurled it hard at him. "You're filthy yourself and you want the whole world to be just like you. Even children know that spreading lies out of spite is disgraceful." Her voice turned to ice as she spoke each word clearly. "And yet, Mr. Wang, you don't even understand that?" Wang clutched the spot where the object had hit him, stunned. He had never imagined Lu Jiling would actually fight back. "You're looking for death," he roared, snatching up a chair and charging toward her. But Lu Jiling didn't move an inch, afraid her act of being blind might be exposed. The chair was just about to crash down, when the husband she barely knew suddenly stepped in front of her. Having his attack interrupted, Wang Jiqing exploded in profanity. But the moment he saw the man's face, his arrogance vanished. "Young Master Bo, hello," he stammered, quickly apologizing for what he had just said. Lu Jiling froze as well. She hadn't expected Bo Wang to attend this banquet. Straightening his collar, Bo Wang asked casually, "Were you just greeting me?" The question made Wang panic, but he hastily pointed at Lu Jiling. "I was talking about her, cursing her." Bo Wang followed his gaze toward Lu Jiling. "Oh, so you were greeting my mother-in-law." Without another word, he kicked him hard. A sharp crack rang out, followed by a scream. Hands still in his pockets, Bo Wang found the sound incredibly satisfying. Then came another kick and another until Wang Jiqing was sprawled on the floor, begging for mercy. But Bo Wang still wasn't satisfied, that he crooked a finger toward the side, taking the glass of red wine Ji Jing handed over. Without hesitation, he poured it straight onto Wang Jiqing's wound. The screams stopped almost instantly. "That's it? Already passed out?" Bo Wang frowned, feeling it wasn't nearly enough. Once again, Lu Jiling saw firsthand just how ruthless he could be. The Gong family quickly apologized for the poor hospitality, promising to throw the man out immediately and invite Bo Wang to the main seat. But Bo Wang simply replied, "Too lazy to move," and sat right where he was, surprising Lu Jiling. Still, with him there, no one else dared to come near. To avoid any unexpected slip-ups, she had to keep up her blind girl act until the end. Taking a quiet breath, Lu Jiling reached out as if feeling her way through the air and asked softly, "Bo Wang, is that you? What's wrong? I'm just happy." As she spoke, Lu Jiling looked every bit like a girl freshly in love. Bo Wang arched a brow. "You don't actually think I'm standing up for you and sitting here to protect you, do you?" She shook her head, saying she was simply happy. The moment the words left her mouth, she quickly withdrew her hand, keeping up the image of liking without intruding. But Bo Wang clearly wasn't satisfied. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her outright, curious to see how she'd react. Just then, the sound of the auction starting echoed through the room, drawing everyone's attention to the first item on display. Lu Jiling mentally calculated the order and figured the agarwood bracelet should be coming up soon. With a subtle signal from her, Uncle Feng raised their bidding paddle and called out, 450,000. Two women at the banquet chuckled, thinking a bid of 450,000 was laughably cheap. Yet Uncle Feng kept offering the same amount for each item, dropping out the moment someone bid higher. Many whispered that the old man was just humoring his mistress, or that he only had that much money. Little did they know, it was all part of Lu Jiling's plan. Finally, the piece she truly wanted, a top-grade agarwood prayer bead bracelet, was brought to the stage. The auctioneer mentioned a flaw. One of the beads bore a child's tooth mark. Lu Jiling listened quietly. Unknowingly, her mind drifted back to when she was 5, and her sixth brother tricked her into thinking it was the best chocolate ever. She bit down, only to chip a front tooth and cry her eyes out. Her grandfather had held her for half the day to comfort her, scolding her brother and buying her real chocolate afterward. Even now, the memory was as vivid as ever. Uncle Feng raised the paddle again and called out firmly, 450,000. Someone in the crowd sneered, still joking around. Even with a flaw, that's worth at least 2,450,000. What a joke. Hearing the laughter that just wouldn't fade, Lu Jiling appeared to snap, snatching the paddle and calling out a clean round number, 1 million. At her words, Uncle Feng's face instantly twisted into panic, as if he couldn't possibly afford it. Yet Bo Wang's eyes lit up, fixing intently on her. To the onlookers, though, it was obvious the old man behind her didn't have that kind of money. Otherwise, why keep bidding only 450,000 earlier? If she actually won and couldn't pay, it would make for a perfect public humiliation. Sensing the opportunity, Gong Zihua picked up the microphone, smiling as she asked everyone to give the Gong family some face and let her classmate have it instead. She then deliberately glanced at Lu Jiling, making her look like a guilty child caught doing something wrong. Without hesitation, Gong Zihua raised the small golden gavel and brought it down. The crisp strike sounded, and Lu Jiling's face instantly bloomed with a joyful smile. At the same time, the staff approached with the signing tablet to complete the final signature and payment process. Gong Zihua curled her lips into a wicked grin, waiting to watch Lu Jiling make a fool of herself. To her surprise, Lu Jiling simply turned to the man beside her and told him to swipe the card. "Jiling, don't do anything beyond your means. Don't ruin the..." Uncle Feng cut in sharply. "This is the young lady's own money." Hugging the box tightly to her chest, Lu Jiling knew her grandfather's most treasured possession was finally back in her hands. Calming herself, she looked up with a smile. "Thank you, Miss Gong, for letting me win this bracelet for just 1 million. Gong Zihua froze on the spot, realizing she had been played like a pawn. Lu Jiling then added, "Uncle Feng is indeed my elder. And yes, I am married to the man I love the most." That line was clearly meant for Bo Wang. He had assumed she would take the chance to declare herself the young madam of the Bo family. Yet even under questioning, she refused to reveal her husband was Bo Wang, only warning coldly that if the rumors continued, she would pursue the matter to the end. Lu Jiling glanced at Bo Wang and said softly, "I'm leaving." "Stop her!" Gong Zihua shouted angrily. But Bo Wang simply set his wine glass down with a heavy thud. Then he stepped directly in front of Lu Jiling. His intimidating presence froze everyone in place, allowing her to walk out unhindered. Yet the moment she stepped outside, Bo Wang was nowhere to be seen. She didn't mind. Uncle Feng had already called a car for her. Just then, a homegrown supercar worth billions roared up at full speed, coming to a perfect stop right in front of her. "Get in!" Bo Wang said coldly, leaving no room for refusal. Where are we going? Back to sleep, he replied, blunt and to the point. Guests from the banquet began filing out, stunned by the sight. Did you see that? Lu Jiling just got into Bo Wang's car. Gong Zihua, eyes full of jealousy, scoffed. So what? Give it a few days and she'll be tossed aside like those wannabe starlets. Inside the car, Lu Jiling kept her gaze on the passing scenery, realizing they weren't heading toward the Bo family estate, but she didn't dare ask. With those blind eyes of yours, what could you possibly see? Then I won't look, she replied evenly. The driver suddenly spoke up. This is Qingjiang. She rolled the window all the way down, letting the night wind tangle her hair. Only then did she realize, home was just a river away. Soon, the car pulled up to its destination, Bo Wang's private residence. Lu Jiling couldn't understand why he had brought her here. When he said, "Come in, let's talk," she remained rooted to the spot. The next moment, he pulled her inside with a firm tug. His hand braced against the door, trapping her in his arms. Then, without a word, his lips claimed hers. In the next instant, he pushed her down onto the bed. Her heart skipped a beat. He couldn't possibly. No. Lu Jiling quickly pushed him away. Bo Wang, don't. He gave a lazy smirk. Don't overthink it. I just don't feel like going out to find another woman. In her mind, she rolled her eyes. Then go find one. But she kept her composure, pretending she wasn't rejecting him. It's not that I don't want to, she said softly. I just don't want you to use me for release when you dislike me. Before he could answer, she snatched up the sandalwood box and made a dash for the door. But before she got far, his arm wrapped tightly around her waist from behind. I'm just a blind woman. I'm not worthy of you, she murmured. That he replied evenly. Doesn't matter. Once the lights are off, it's all the same. The heat between them was about to ignite, until a sudden phone call shattered the moment. Bo Wang's expression darkened as he picked up the phone. Someone wanted him to deal with trouble over on Nanyang Road. He refused on the spot, his tone infuriatingly blunt. I'm in bed with a woman. Hearing that, Lu Jiling wanted nothing more than to bite him. The voice on the other end turned cold. Fine, but don't expect to touch your mother's inheritance again. Without hesitation, Bo Wang hung up. He started toward the door and Lu Jiling quietly let out a breath, thinking she'd escaped unscathed. But then he flicked on the light and suddenly doubled back. His gaze lingered on her torn neckline. She didn't even try to cover herself. His steps faltered for a second, yet his father's order still hung over him. In one swift move, he snatched the sandalwood box from her arms. Prayer beads. Lu Jiling nodded nervously. Yes. I even had them blessed by the master at Pujua Temple. Bo Wang smirked. So this is the treasure? Of course it is, give it back. Lu Jiling screamed in her heart but didn't dare let the words slip out. Instead, she said evenly, it was my grandmother's token of love to my grandfather. He completely misunderstood, thinking she'd gone through the trouble of bidding for it as a gift to him. Without hesitation, he slipped the beads onto his own wrist. I'll accept your thoughtfulness. With that, he turned and walked away. Lu Jiling froze. That's it. Just take it. That was 1,000,000 yuan out of her pocket, and he even said it like he was doing her a favor. Then again, she'd brought it to him on her own. Who else could she blame? But soon she realized it was all a misunderstanding. 2.5 minutes later, Ji Jing showed up at the door holding a gift box. Only then did Lu Jiling piece it together. Today was Bo Wang's birthday. That he'd thought she endured an entire night of humiliation just to get this string of prayer beads for him. Wasn't this the kind of plot you only saw in a manhua? After Ji Jing was turned away, Lu Jiling also prepared to leave, only to find the front door required Bo Wang's Face ID to unlock. With no way out, she wandered onto the south-facing balcony, letting her mind drift. Her gaze settled on the direction of the Lu family estate, stirring a tide of memories. She wondered if the little sapling she planted with her parents had grown into a towering tree, and whether the small stone bridge in the back pavilion she used to visit with her brothers was still standing. Lost in the warmth of nostalgia, she was jolted back by a sudden bang. Bo Wang stepped through the door, blood on his shoulder, a dangerous, battered aura clinging to him. Without a word, he grabbed a glass of water and downed it in one go. Bo Wang, you're back? She asked carefully. He snapped his head toward her, sharp-eyed, clearly not expecting her to still be there. He raised a hand, beckoning her over. But in the next heartbeat, as if even a second was too long to wait, he yanked her straight into his arms. "You're hurt," she blurted. Bo Wang's reply was a cold, loaded question. "Were you waiting for me to die, or to come back?" "Of course I was waiting for you to come back," Lu Jiling replied crisply, though in her head she muttered, "If you don't come back, how am I supposed to get out of here? I'll call an ambulance. You don't need me to patch you up, right?" "I can't even see," she started, but Bo Wang cut her off with a raised hand. "No need. I'm taking a shower," he said, staggering toward the bathroom, leaving a faint trail of blood. The thought struck her. If he bled out in there, she'd somehow be held responsible. That alone made her follow him, unwilling to take the risk. Drops of blood led her all the way to the bathroom, where Bo Wang lowered himself into the tub. He picked up the shower head, turned on the water, and let the warm spray wash the blood from his skin. Lu Jiling hurried over, first asking where the first aid kit was. She pretended to fumble around before pulling out some gauze, casually asking where exactly he was hurt. This time, Bo Wang didn't even respond. He simply raised the shower head and let the water stream down his face. With one hand, he brushed back his dripping hair, exuding a dangerous, almost magnetic allure. Then in one swift motion he ripped off his soaked shirt, revealing several deep, jagged knife wounds across his body. Without warning, he snatched the bottle of antiseptic from her hand. Then without hesitation he poured it straight over the wound. His face went pale from the pain, but he grit his teeth and stayed completely silent. Once he was done, he leaned back in the tub as if he could fall asleep right there. After confirming the location of the wound again, Lu Jiling carefully reached out to feel for it. The moment her fingers brushed over the injury, Bo Wang's breathing hitched sharply. Hearing the faint irritation in his tone, she quickly apologized. "Sorry, I can't see. Is there another wound here?" Yet even as she spoke, her fingers kept wandering, secretly thinking, this was too rare an opportunity to waste. Before long, she was pressing and poking all over, nearly making him roll his eyes from the pain. Her so-called bandaging went on for a full 2.5 hours. When she finally asked if there were any more injuries, Bo Wang shot back instantly, "No." He suddenly curved his lips into a dangerous smile. "You hurt me just now. How about we share the pain together?" Sure enough, the moment the bandaging was done, his energy was back like nothing had happened. Lu Jiling pretended not to understand, but the cold glint of the scissors made her instinctively take a step back. Bo Wang glanced at the untouched scissors, a flicker of regret flashing in his eyes. Yet when he thought of the warmth she'd given him moments ago, his heart softened just a little. By now he was becoming utterly shameless in front of this blind woman. She quickly fastened his belt, murmuring a few words of concern. Then she carefully helped him to the bed, tucked him in, and was just about to find an excuse to leave, when suddenly Bo Wang grabbed her and pulled her into his arms. "Where are you going? We still have unfinished business." "No, honey, you're too injured right now," she said, forcing a tender tone into her voice. But he ignored her completely, leaning in to whisper, "One's injured, one's pregnant. Perfect time to enjoy paradise together." Lu Jiling cursed him silently. "Pervert who's enjoying paradise with you?" Yet on the surface she kept up the act. "Even if I die, you have to live well." Hearing her words, Bo Wang's hand went limp, dropping back onto the bed as he closed his eyes. Lu Jiling quietly walked toward the door. Just before stepping out, she murmured, "Happy birthday, Bo Wang," and closed it behind her. The next morning she arrived early at the tea house. When Uncle Feng mentioned that many customers had cancelled their tea subscriptions, she wasn't the least bit surprised. After all, Gong Zihua had wanted to see her embarrassed. Not getting her wish, of course she'd retaliate. But Lu Jiling wasn't worried. She had already arranged for Madame Ji to come for tea today. Madame Ji and Madame Gong had been enemies since childhood. Inviting her now was the perfect move. Just then the sound of a car pulling up came from outside, and two elderly ladies walked in together, chatting and laughing. Lu Jiling froze. She hadn't expected Madame Ding Yujun from the Bo family to be there as well, and to be Madame Ji's close friend. With no other choice, she braced herself and stepped forward to greet them. Madame Ji looked at her curiously. "How did you know she's from the Bo family?" Only then did Lu Jiling realize. The Bo family also used her tea. No wonder this little blind boss could brew such a flawless cup. Uncle Feng suddenly dropped a bomb. "In just a few days, this tea house will be shutting down." When that happens, Madame G, would you still take in our little boss? Madame G froze, then immediately pressed, what happened? Uncle Feng seized the moment, giving a full, and slightly exaggerated, account of how Lu Jiling had offended the Gong family's young miss at the Angel fundraising gala. Madame G's expression darkened and she slammed the table. Outrageous. Don't you worry, little boss. That auction house deal we discussed? I'm agreeing to it right now. Hearing this, Lu Jiling immediately stood up, sincerely thanking Madame G and promising she would never betray that trust. Off to the side, Ding Yujun murmured, isn't that a bit rushed? Madame G waved her off. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Last time I almost got fooled, she was the one who warned me and exposed it as a fake. Ding Yujun was caught off guard. Her old friend was famous for her sharp eyes and rarely praised anyone. What shocked her even more was hearing Madame G casually muse about making Lu Jiling her granddaughter-in-law. Ding Yujun almost laughed. This girl was already wearing a ring. But in her mind, young people wearing rings didn't necessarily mean anything serious. That blasé attitude nearly made Ding Yujun blurt out the truth. This little boss was actually the daughter-in-law of the Bo family, but she bit her tongue. Moments later, Madame G excused herself to the restroom. As soon as she was out of earshot, Ding Yujun leaned in and urged Lu Jiling to just close the tea house, adding that if the Bo family's payout wasn't enough, she could top it up herself. But even faced with such a generous offer, Lu Jiling didn't flinch. She knew all too well she was nothing more than a placeholder in the Bo family. The fact that no outsider knew she was the eldest young madam made it clear. The Bo family only wanted to give the child a respectable background. He as a person was irrelevant. Ding Yujun fell silent. She had once believed Lu Jiling married in for the Bo family's wealth, but now, she realized she'd been wrong. This woman was fiercely determined to stand on her own. Lu Jiling reached out to touch the teacup, ready to refill it. But Ding Yujun suddenly clasped her hand, staring into her eyes. Tell me, did you never want to marry into the Bo family in the first place?